apparatus is a Y-shaped collection of bones that sits in between his cheeks in there. It attaches to the poll at the top here, the temporomandibular joint, which is his jaw joint, which is there, and the base of the tongue, which is about there.
Yeah.
And from there, it's directly connected to here by muscle and fascia chains. And what you've got is you've got the flexor chain that starts with the tongue. So you go tongue, hyoid apparatus, and then it comes all the way here, includes all the abdominal muscles, comes down to here, and then your extensor chain takes over, and that comes all the way up the back.
So it affects the entire way of going for the horse, doesn't it?
Yeah. And attaches back to the poll here, and then back to the hyoid apparatus. So your hyoid apparatus connects your flexor and extensor chains.
Right.
And they've actually found that every single muscle in the whole of the horse's body is connected to the hyoid apparatus. And on post-mortem, they find anything we do that restricts their temporomandibular joint, like a tight nose band, so if they hold the jaw like that, or if they create excessive tongue pressure by holding the tongue like that, it's really hard to move that hind limb. It's solid.
Oh, right.
Let go of their face, and suddenly we have full and free hind limb movement. So what they've realised is that anything that creates tension in this hyoid apparatus creates tension in the neck. If you have tension in the neck, they can't lift the shoulder. If they can't lift the shoulder, they can't lift the back, and they have a hollow back. And if you have a hollow back, you can't get your legs underneath.
No.
You need to be able to lift your back to be able to get your legs underneath.
Yes.
So what we need to do is try and get this hyoid apparatus as balanced and relaxed as possible so that they can relax the neck.
Yeah.
When the neck is relaxed, then they can lift the shoulder, then they can lift the back, and then they can get the hind limb underneath. And the reason we want to get that hind limb underneath us is twofold, really. One, because we want them to lift their back to carry our weight safely.
Yeah, of course,
Because obviously if they're like that and we put our weight on and the side more like that, that's when you get things like hissing spines.
Yes.
But also this is where our braking system comes from.
That's very important.
Which is very important because it is their ability to be able to sit on their bottom that enables them to lift the front legs and lighten and stop.
Yes.
And I say to people, it's a bit like if you're running down a hill, what do you do to stop? You tend to run faster, don't you? And you run through it. When you lose your balance, you run on.
Yeah.
And horses do the same. So once their weight is stuck on their forehand and they can't shift the weight back onto their back legs, they're just running. And they run, and it feels like you've got no brakes because they've got no balance. So they're running on their forehand in an attempt to balance themselves. But that feels to us like we've got no brakes. But it's what we need to do is actually free them biomechanically so that when we give them a half halt, they can actually shift that weight onto their bottoms, step underneath and go, oh yeah, I can stop now. So that's really what we're trying to achieve from a biomechanical point of view. The other reason we want to keep their jaw as free as possible is because they use their jaw like a pendulum for balance, like we would use our arms. So again, if we're running down that hill and we're losing balance, we run faster, but we also put our arms out to balance ourselves. They do that with their jaw.
Right.
So if we strap it shut, it's like us running down a hill with our arms strapped by our sides, trying to balance.
Oh God, yes, yeah. So, well, he doesn't even have a nose band, so simple as possible.
Always best.
Always best.
Always
yes.
Best. So that's what we're trying to do, like I say, from a biomechanics.
But yes, I can see the principle is affects the whole horse.
And it's not just the nose band that affects the temporomandibular joint. The whole bridle fit does.
Yeah.
So if we just move you back a little bit. So the temporomandibular joint is here, and of course this can be affected by the buckles of your bridle, your brow band, your headpiece to some extent. So there's more than one element. And of course your tongue is connected to the temporomandibular joint, so the bit can also affect it.
And they've got so many things on their face that's veins and
so many superficial,
it's very close to the surface, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and they can get pins and needles in their face like we can get pins and needles in our hands from ill-fitting tack.
Yes.
So we've got to be really mindful of those. The brain sits just below the poll here, and then from there stems their entire nervous system. And a lot of those nerves exit the skull around the base of the ears here, but also the temporomandibular joint here. And actually the temporomandibular joint is the most highly innervated joint in the whole of the horse's body.
Right.
And some of those nerves are to do with proprioception, and that's his ability to know where he's putting his feet. So that's directly connected to balance.
Yeah.
But you've also got nerves that affect muscle ability, so their ability to chew. They can affect eyesight, they can affect saliva glands, they can affect sensation in the skin. So a whole multitude of things. One of the main nerves that comes out of there is called the trigeminal nerve. That splits into 3 branches, and that literally controls the whole of the head. So the one branch controls all the bottom part here.
Yeah.
The middle part controls kind of this section here, and then the other part controls all of that there. So if we impinge on that trigeminal nerve as it exits the skull there, it can affect the whole head.
Yeah, sure.
You've also got the facial nerve that runs right down where we put our cheek pieces and hooks underneath the facial crest there. So that's right where our cheek pieces go, so we've got to be mindful of that. We also have a big hole in the skull about here called the infraorbital foramen, where the infraorbital nerve comes
I'm glad I'm
of.
recording this because I wouldn't. Don't test me on it all later.
Oh, there will be a written test.
Help.
That's part of the trigeminal nerve. And the only way we can avoid impacting on that is if we have 2 fingers underneath that facial crest. So when we're talking about noseband height, we really want to be able to fit 2 fingers under this bony bit here, which is your facial crest.
Yes.
And then on the other side, you've got the nasal plane, which is this bony bit here. And as you run it down his face, you get to a soft spot there. So that soft spot is called the naso-incisive notch. And we have to have the noseband above that naso-incisive notch. So we've got naso-incisive notch there and 2 fingers under the facial crest there.
Yes.
That's where you want your noseband to be. You never, ever, ever, ever want anything to sit below the naso-incisive notch, because this here starts off as bone but turns into cartilage, just like in our nose here.
Yeah.
And they are incredibly fragile.
Yes,
and
it's so soft.
Again, on post-mortem, they found they are fractured because of nosebands.
Oh, dear God.
So we have literally been breaking our horses' noses.
Yes.
Which is not on.
No, it's horrible.
Also, this squidgy bit is, of course, nostril.
Yes.
And noses are fairly important for breathing.
Yes.
Especially if horses are obligate nasal breathers. They can only breathe through their noses. They can't breathe through their mouths. So if we have any strap, even loose fitting on there, it's like you walking around like that.
Yeah, it's horrible, isn't it? Oh,
you can't breathe properly. So we don't want to impinge their ability to breathe. We also have a big hole in their skull about here called the mandibular foramen, where the
You're listening, Goose.
where the trigeminal nerve exits the skull down here, and that innervates all the lower lip and the teeth and everything. And that invariably is impinged by any noseband strap that comes underneath the bit here and into that chin.
Yeah.
So,
hate it. I've always stripped everything off.
And it's the best thing to do. In terms of horse comfort, the absolute only comfortable option is a loose fitting cafson. If you're going to have a loose fitting
absolutely,
cafson,
absolutely,
that is the only
absolutely. You see some absolutely awful looking fittings around the faces.
And so tight, so tight.
Yeah.
And then you look at their eye and you go, they look anguished.
Yes, absolutely.
So, but we're getting into a lot of trouble for that now in elite dressage and things. And I think it's all going to come tumbling down. But
it's not horsemanship, is it?
No, it's riding by domination.
It's force.
And that's not really
it's
what
force.
it should be.
Right.
And that brings the whole social licence thing into question. And if we're not careful, we won't be allowed horses.